Hear me talk about mediation, and our audience is people dealing with very difficult exes, so a lot of people are afraid of mediation. But today I am going to not be interviewing a mediator. I thought she was a mediator, but she's not a mediator. Here she is. She's a negotiator. And so one of the things that we're even going to start with negotiation and mediation, because there's a lot more things you can do with negotiation. So thank you so much, Lynn, for coming on today. Before you even introduce yourself, why don't you say, what is the difference between negotiation and mediation? Because sorry, I put that you were a mediator because I kept thinking it's the same.
Yeah, people tend to they tend to think that it's the same thing, but there are some differences. So mediation, that can be either formal court ordered, they're saying you're going to go mediate before we're going to take it on and look at the case, or it could be just in a contract. You could sign a contract saying instead of litigating, we're going to seek mediation first. So you'll have a third party come in and help you, figure out a solution there. Whereas in negotiation, you don't need a third party. It could be you and I deciding we're gonna, I have goods and services, you want them, and we just describe price or something like that. But they can happen at any time during your day. You can be in a negotiation. It could be with your family members. It could be, with other coworkers for resources and policies. Like all sorts of things can be negotiated. So it's a difference, but they are very similar in terms of your influence in persuading someone else to kind of get on your side.
Yeah, I was thinking, I read somewhere that we negotiate maybe 100 times a day, little things like which restaurant should we go to, or what choice am I going to make when you're dealing with another person. So it's not the same at all as mediation. So before we even get into it, Lynn, why don't you officially introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, great. So again, my name is Lynn Price. I'm a negotiation speaker and trainer, and I'm an author and an attorney. And while I was an attorney, I spent over 25 years in-house counsel doing corporate law. And so during that time, I did over 11,000 negotiations. So when you do that kind of volume, yeah, it's a lot, a lot of contracts, a lot of negotiations. So in that volume, I started to see patterns and things that are working really well, things that aren't. And so then I created the formula of the 3 R's, which is with the focus of my book. And so it's how to use this formula. And I like it because for 3 reasons. One, it's easy to remember. It's not a law school diagram. It's easy to remember because sometimes in negotiation, like I mentioned, it could happen on the fly. So it's easy to remember, so you can get to it when you need to, and it's super effective, right? It's very effective, and that's important because when you have when you start getting confident and when you get these little wins, you gain more confidence. And so if you have a tool that's effective and ready to go, you can build confidence, and then it's like a snowball. You just get better the time and time again, more comfortable asking for it. So again, it's effective, it's easy to remember, and it's highly helpful.
Yeah, so you talked about confidence, and I'm thinking that many people who are negotiating in our community with a very difficult ex, there's a disparity in the power dynamic where one person seems really scary and powerful, and usually our client is like, I can't, like, I'm scared to even go in to negotiate because I feel like they're going to steamroll me. What do you say to someone in that position who's starting off like, oh, I can't do this?
Yeah, so leverage is a thing. I'm not going to argue it's not. It's definitely a thing, but it's really more of the perception. And the thing that I want everyone to know um, is that just because I perceive that you have more leverage and you're better situated in this negotiation does not mean I don't ask. I still get to make the ask. I still get to bring up the points that I want. I still come to you, and that's my whole. The thing I want most when I work with clients is like for them to adopt a don't ask, don't get philosophy, because you have to be making the ask because people are not going to read your mind. So even though someone else might have more leverage, you still make the ask. And again, obviously my background is all in corporate law, but almost 14 years I was in the construction industry, and we were a small player on large construction sites, and we had no leverage, right? I mean, really, like not much at all. And we were still highly effective at getting things that we wanted because we came in with the mindset of we're going to make the ask, we're going to explain the why behind it so you can understand why we're asking, so we can get buy-in, so we can get a solution, so we can move forward, because we need to have this resolved. And we have that coming into an environment where, hey, I need these things in order for it to be a success. You need to just kind of have that up front. But when someone is intimidating like that, I think you just remind yourself that I don't need permission to make the ask. Like I don't need their permission to stand up for myself, you
Hmm.
know? And so just reminding yourself, like, I don't need their permission to make an ask.
Yeah, so I hear a lot of like how confidence can really impact
Mhm.
situations like these. Like having more confidence makes you more likely to get what you're asking for because of your attitude. But that's hard to, to get
It is
there.
hard. And, that's one thing that you really, that's what you have to, the first R of the formula is actually being ready. And so that's your due diligence. And I think when you recognize that, hey, I'm intimidated, this is a scary situation to be in. I don't like this. That's where you really have to do some work and shore that
Mhm.
up and, figure out, okay, I know this is a weakness. Who can I get that's good at this, that can help me? What resources do I have to improve this a little bit? And a lot of times, especially in something when it's a new skill, it's scary because you're having to get uncomfortable, because you're inherently you're gonna have feedback, you might have failure, it's intimidating. But when you get in there and just remind yourself, like, this is a form of self-advocacy. Me working
Mhm.
on this and me getting the confidence to ask is advocating for myself. And I'm going to be proud of myself later if I get uncomfortable now.
Mhm.
So, a lot of times, though, when you're learning a new skill, you have to just kind of fake it. Like, yeah, I'm not 100% comfortable, but when am I ever going to be comfortable in this situation? I'm not. But if I do some work, if I do some due diligence and kind of shore up the things that I know I'm worried about, I'm going to be more confident walking in than if I hadn't.
Right. And anybody who starts something new is going to be uncomfortable because it's new and it's change
Hmm.
and it's crazy. I'm thinking about just like a couple of months ago, my partner Chris took me to try curling, and I was like, I don't even know what
Right.
that is. I'd never even seen it. And there's these brooms and ice, and I thought, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but it was actually okay. But I was resistant. So it's that same kind of thing. It's normal to feel resistant. And like you said, it sounds like the first R is being ready.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
again, it's just making sure in what you did, like you were resistant, but you still did it,
yeah.
and you might have had to like act a little bit more confident when you're in, do they call it a ring? I guess. I know it's on ice, but I don't know
It
what
was,
the,
I don't know. It was
I don't know.
very interesting. You had to slide
Yeah,
and
I love watching it during the Olympics. It's so fun.
yeah.
Um, but you still did it, you still made yourself do it, and you could have found a lot of excuses to not
Mhm.
go, but you did it, and then sounds like you had a good time. Same thing when you're approaching negotiation is just knowing that, hey, there's something I want out of this interaction, and I'm going to be bold and confident and ask for it because no one's going to read my mind. I don't need permission, and it's okay for me to ask for what I want. And just sometimes just having that boomerang statement come back to you. You know what? I don't need permission, and it's okay for me to ask for what I want.
Yeah. Now you had talked about something like prioritizing your ask.
Yes.
Tell us
Yeah.
about
Yeah, so in a negotiation, there's an ebb and flow. You can't come into negotiation and say, here's what I want. I'm not going to accept anything less. Please go do this. So that's not a negotiation. That's really just like a demand, right?
that. Hmm.
Negotiation, you have to have things that you can give away. You have to have things that, maybe don't mean so much, that you can be holistic when you're looking at the changes in what you want. So you can kind of move it back and forth. It's very much a dance. So in advance, part of your being ready and that due diligence is to define your priorities. So I put them in three different buckets. I have my have to have. So those are the ones that I absolutely, just like it says, I absolutely have to have these things or I'm not making a deal with you. It'll be a bad deal for me and my family, my kids, whoever's involved. I will walk away. These are what I call the Nancy Sinatra items. I will put on these boots and walk because I
Hmm.
have to have these. And I think the key to those is keeping that list as small as possible. Because
I was going
if
to say, like, you can't come in with so many halves
no,
if you
no,
have to, if you're going to be flexible.
no. So you really have to, I mean, these have to be the things that are truly to your core value, the things that really, really matter. Those are have to haves. And then keep those are going to be your North Star. Because when it gets emotional, when everything gets, drawn in, when it's time pressured, when things are really coming at you, you have to be able to remind yourself, I'm not giving up on these, three, four things because I already defined this before I came in here. That's going to be a bad deal. So it kind of prevents you, kind of buffers the lanes and prevents you from making a bad deal in the heat of the moment. So
Hmm.
that's the first one. The second one are the helpful haves. These are things that are going to improve your situation. They're going to improve your standing, whatever that may be. Um, but you're not tied, like you're not going to walk on each one of them. You can give some of these away. The key here is like, and this is where most of the negotiation happens, right? It's right in this kind of middle bucket where I really want these things. Here's the reason why, or maybe not. It depends on who you're talking to and whether you give them the reason or not. Um, but like these are the things that are really going to improve my situations. The majority of the things are going to be here in this bucket. So again, you can move those around, but you want to look at those holistically. So it's not just, okay, I have this one thing. It's like, okay, if I give this up, what can I get later in this agreement? If I surrender this standing, what else can I ask for in response to what I gave up? Right. So a lot of negotiation happens there. And then that third bucket, those are kind of your hopeful halves. Like there's a reason it's going to help you somehow. It's going to be, improve a little bit, but you aren't going to lose sleep. If you have to give those things up, you're not going to, lose any sleep. They're kind of sacrificial lambs. Like, it's fine. That's not going to be a big deal to give away. And sometimes that's great because sometimes that's the thing they might care about the most. And
Hmm.
that's a perfect negotiation, right? Where I'm giving up something that I don't care about. And that was the one thing that you really wanted coming into this. Everyone's going to feel like they won if that's the case.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of psychology here. With our clients, we often say you don't want to just say what's really important to you right away, because we know the other side will just be like, well, that's the thing I'm not doing. So how
Right.
do you deal when someone is just being difficult, where they're in the negotiation, but it's almost like they're waiting to see what you really want so they can say, that's the one thing I'm not going to give you.
Yeah, that's I think where you really have to have the poker face, right? And try to cover up what you really want. And
Yeah.
again, when you come into that, you don't there's no rule that says you have to. It's not like being in a courtroom. They don't say you have to disclose all these things in advance. You can hold these things back. You can know what your have to haves are and not tell them, and you can focus on the other things. You can start out with the hopeful haves, the things you really don't care that much about, and kind of
Hmm.
see if you can build some consensus and give those away. And now, oh great, they feel like they're winning, and wow, look at what they're getting away with over me. And they're things you didn't care about at all. So sometimes, depending on the personality you work with, yeah, like, and you can be real reluctant, and there's some acting that goes along with that a little too. Like, well, I mean, gosh, I guess you can get that dog I never wanted, give it that away. When if you know it in advance and the priorities, you're going to feel much more secure on what you're doing, and you're going to get more confidence there because you know what you're doing. That there's a strategy here that you're working, and the strategy is to give up things and give some things that you don't care that much about, or I'm going to lose that. So let's make a big deal about it. Let's see if that builds some rapport, which is actually the second R, which is being relatable.
Hmm.
Because in negotiations, and that people help people that they like,
Hmm.
and again, this is the corporate side, so we have to tweak a little bit that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
with this, but I can tell you, listen, at 11,000 negotiations, I had the whole run of different types of people, and there
Hmm.
were some that were very X-like, manipulative and aggressive and demeaning, like it wasn't all
That's
puppies and
definitely.
rainbows. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So you have to adjust there. So, so being relatable to that could be, um, and I think we had talked about this, like it's focusing not on me being relatable to you, but like, hey, here's something we can both relate to. Like, well, we both know that we want this to not affect the kid. Like, we both want the kids to be okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of hits that same reasonable or relatable tone. We're like, okay, yeah, we can agree on that. Okay, yeah, that kind of makes you a little bit more relatable in their eyes.
Yeah. So when we teach communication, we talk about something we call the universal agreement. It's like, what's something that we both agree on, even though I'm going to suggest it. So, for example, we both want our kids to do well in school.
Right,
Okay. It's almost like drops the anchor. All right. Now, how are we going to figure out how to make that happen?
right.
What what's going to make sure they continue to do well in school, if they have like a stable routine? So then how are we going to make sure they have a stable routine, and like you said, just keep building on it?
Yeah. And again, I think that's how you build a good rapport, even with a bad situation,
Hmm.
is finding that common ground. And sometimes you're going to have to kind of keep coming back to that. And that's okay. It's again, having what I refer to as boomerang responses, that either you can have it where it comes back, it's something you can throw out that you can say, and it lets that other party know, I'm not changing my mind.
Okay,
And
give
so
us an example. What?
it's a very, like, I understand you're upset by this.
Hmm.
I understand this is upsetting. If you keep saying that like doesn't actually say much, it's a pretty
Hmm.
benign statement. But if they're like really fighting with you and trying to get you to, I refer to as negotiate against yourself. Like if I made a statement, I asked for something, and it gets them all activated, and so they're coming. I have to have a response ready just have a kind of a benign, like, I understand you're upset by this. Because the
Mhm.
more you say that, they realize, okay, she's not going to change her opinion. She's not going to negotiate against herself when I didn't offer anything in response. I'm just being emotional back at what she asked. So if you make an ask and you make a request to someone, just stop talking. Be comfortable with the fact that you made your ask, and that's it. Allow them time to respond. Don't negotiate against yourself. I see this all the time when people are uncomfortable with their ask, or they're uncomfortable in this situation because they haven't practiced it. And so, like, if you're at a car dealership and you say, or anything where you're negotiating price, and you say, hey, could you take $5,000 off? And they are so not ready for someone to just be silent and not immediately jump back and say yes or no.
Mhm.
So it's like, can you take 5,000 off? Like 3,000 would be okay. I mean, two would be fine. It's like, you just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
negotiate. You just say five and stop talking. Give them space to think about it and to process. And it could get awkward. It sometimes does get awkward, but you still aren't going to take the bait, because then you just say, what are your thoughts on that? How
Mm.
do you respond? So you have something to say to them where it's not, you're very clear, like, I made you an offer, now you have to respond. You either accept, reject, or you walk away, or you make a counteroffer. Really, that's it. Accept it, reject it, or counteroffer. So
Mhm.
be comfortable in what you're asking for, and be very comfortable being silent, being comfortable in that silence.
That is so hard. We often talk
It's
about
hard.
pausing in
Mhm.
general. So
Absolutely.
hard.
It's hard. It's hard. And I think it's hard because just the topic that you deal with in general, like this, I think it's probably one of the most hard topics to keep your cool, right? And it's very hard to do. I think there are two other things that I use a lot. One is that I learned really early in my career. He's now retired general in the Army. He said, if it feels good to say it, don't. And
Mm.
and that has kept me quiet a lot in negotiations, because the reason that's good advice is because in this, listen, there's a time and a place to use emotion, and we can talk about that in a minute. I'm not saying you have to be a robot and never show emotion. I just want people to be doing it intentionally and strategically, not reactively. So if it feels good to say it, don't. That means if it's going to feel good, if we're in a fight right now and you brought something up and I'm like, oh no, you didn't, like, I know exactly what you're talking about and you're absolutely wrong, and like, you even just that tone, like, I'm starting to get mad right now. We don't have beef, but
Yeah,
like, it
yeah, yeah.
triggers something,
Like
like,
I
I'm
can
like, oh,
prove, I can prove it.
I can crush you right now, is that
Yeah.
kind of a reaction that's going to feel good, right? Not just a barb, but this is going to feel good because I really have something on you. When you do that, like, it's not going to help your situation. It's going to escalate everything. I'm not saying you don't address it, but that's when you take your pause and, like, hey, we need to come back. I need to take a break. We'll revisit this later. So you get that temperature to come down, because then you can create it. You can approach it in a way where you can get a resolution and not just escalate, escalate. And then everyone's, on fire, and it's not helping anyone. So if it feels good to say it, don't. The other one I use a lot of time is the wait. So why am I talking?
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, so again, you can get in situations where um you you want to justify. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, because I have some thoughts, because I mean, this is your area. But in a lot of business, when I do it, like in contract negotiations, even employment law, sometimes, you want to explain the why behind it, because you want to justify, because that helps people understand where you're coming from, and then they can get more creative, because the third R is actually being reasonable. And that's
Hmm.
not, it's not being a doormat, that's not letting them do whatever, and you have to be, that's really just the R for being creative. Like, it's reasonable to think that you and I are getting a divorce, and it has to end at some point. So what do we need to do to get there? That is my
Hmm.
reasonableness. So how am I going to get creative to end this, because it needs to end eventually, because this is not a place that we want to stay long term. So, but again, in business, I would say, use the why, explain why and everything. But I'm thinking in, like, these high conflict, maybe you don't, because then they're just going to use that against you, or they're going to um, use that as justification on why they don't want to do that. Whereas if you were, for example, I would say, like, if you said, I need you to switch weekends because my mom's having surgery, then they could say, well, you're not even close with your mom, or why
Hmm.
doesn't your sister do it, or I like your mom, I'll do it, so you keep, I'm like, that's not the point. But so you could just say, I need you to switch weekends, period. And then
We
that's
would
again
never
like,
say I need to someone like that,
oh
because when you
yeah.
say I need, it's a no.
So it's we need to, is it a
Nope,
we?
no need. There's no need. It's
Ah,
almost like thinking about a way that the other person would benefit before you make the ask. So
perfect. And that's being relatable to them,
yeah,
right? That's making yourself relatable. That's the second R, is that like they're going to think about themselves first. So what can I do to get ahead of that?
right,
You
right,
know,
yeah. And
how would you address that then?
yeah, so again, like if I need to switch, I definitely, the last thing I want to do is make my desperation public. I would have to figure out how to couch it and to think about something that my ex wants, where switching weekends on this particular thing would be interesting. Or I would make it that that we joke around with our clients. We have this weekly legal abuse support group, and we come up with ideas. And someone was like, "Oh, I really want this weekend with my kid." And like, how am I going to get it? And so one of our clients said, just tell your ex, hey, I'm going away with my boyfriend this weekend. Can you take the kid? No.
Brilliant, right?
Yeah.
That's
And the
brilliant.
other thing, right. So you think about how they would react to whatever it is you're asking. But if it's something you really want, you make it like you don't want it sometimes.
Right. Yeah, that's
Tell me with
brilliant.
that. You know your ex. The other thing is asking why. Like you talked about justifying. So that's something in communication in general. We say you never ask why and don't answer why, because like you said, it's a distraction.
Hmm.
So then they're going to find something else to pick apart. And what they want is your attention more than anything, positive or negative. So there's no reason to get into the reason behind an ask. Just, can you do it or not?
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say, like yes or no. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you why I'm asking for it, but if you're available, fine. If not, I'll make other plans. I'll have
Yeah.
my partner watch the kid. Nope,
Yeah,
I'll do
that's so
it.
interesting. I mean, it's so interesting how you can really tweak these to that specific situation,
Right.
and again, that's where you're doing your due diligence when you think about, okay, you have to think several steps ahead. If I do this, they're going to do that, so I need to change, and then always be ready to pivot too, because sometimes they will change on you, and you have to kind of have that backup. And so thinking like your counterpart, thinking like what their pain points are always going to be helpful in the long run. And that's always like when I tell people, like, that's part of being ready, and you're in that stage, is really think about what they need, what objections are going to be, and
Mhm.
then how are you get, like, I would say on the corporate world, like, how are get to the why, like, and figure out that solution. But on your side, it might be um, know what their objections are, and how to avoid those, or how to work around them, or like the tricks to get them to say yes.
Yeah. So, for example, when you talk about needs, it comes back to, I think, your the quality of being relatable is knowing that to a lot of these people and to humans in general, they need to feel good about themselves. They need to
Hmm.
feel like they're a good person. So, going into, let's say, a formal mediation, we say with people like our exes coming in with blaming and accusations and that sort of like, oh, this feels good. I'm going to expose
Hmm.
you and you're going to
Right.
see that you should do what I want. It never works, because then they're like, I don't want to be here. This makes me uncomfortable. So I'm just going to leave and we're going to go litigate, which is the
Yeah.
last thing we want. So
Yeah.
instead, to come in and be enthusiastic, it's hard. We have like little props we use of like an Oscar and a barf bag, where you're going to, like you said, fake it till you make it. We're
Yeah.
so glad to be here because we were together all this time and we raised these beautiful children. And I know we can come up, we both want the same thing. Those couple of things, like we both love the
Hmm.
kids, we want them to do well, we want to avoid disrupting their lives more than necessary. Like we both want it. It's not like I'm the good parent and you're the bad parent, even if you feel that way. And I know our clients all feel that way, but to make it feel like I'm not against you, even though I am,
Hmm.
but we both want the same thing. And how can we come up with something where maybe you can still feel good about yourself, and I can feel like, oh, I did something strategic and I made some progress, even though I didn't think I could. But
Yeah.
to make sure that person feels like they are not a bad human being, because coming in and attacking doesn't work. But when you say, you know what, you're a really good parent, our kids do love you, we got to figure out some way to keep you in their life and do whatever, you're going to get a lot farther than like, no, you don't know what you're doing, you've never participated, blah blah blah.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And then it's coming back to that idea where sometimes you have to do uncomfortable things to get to your goal. And my goal might just be peace. And I don't like having to act like this and act like you're a great parent. And I don't want to see you again for the rest of my life, but I know we will because we have kids and that's the
Right.
way it goes. But in order to get this resolved so we can get on to the next chapter and we'll figure that, the maintain relationship out later, I'm going to have to do some things that I might not like. And the thing is, I think you can swallow that pill a little bit easier when you know that you're doing it strategically and for a reason and not like you're just reacting and like, I just had to say this, I didn't mean it. And you almost feel like a victim because you
Right.
had to
Like
do this.
the same relationship dynamic where you feel like, oh, I just have to like coddle that
Placate.
person. Yeah, you're not placating. You're
Yeah.
doing it tactically.
Yeah, you're doing it for yourself. And I actually just had this conversation with my son the other day. I mentioned how I walked away from an interaction and I left money on the table. It was a fair amount of money on the table, but it had been really contentious, really ugly, dragging on. Just and it was. I know you had an episode about like the physical toll it takes, conflict can take on your body, and it was like it was really taking a toll. And like, I value peace more at this stage, so I'm leaving money on the table. Well, my son's 18, and he heard that, and he goes, well, are you still comfortable with that decision? Because for him, when you're younger, I don't think you value peace as much as you do when
Money.
you're a parent, when you're old. Yeah, exactly. He just heard dollar signs. Like, you did what? I
Yeah.
just bought something with that. But to know like that was a strategic decision on my part, and looking at the holistic thing. This wasn't, if you would have looked at said like, aren't you a negotiation expert? Like, why did you leave money on the table? Because it was making me sick, because I didn't want to interact with that person anymore, and because it was the right move for me. That doesn't mean I do it all the time. It doesn't mean the next time I get involved in a relationship or a negotiation, I'm like, uh-oh, I set a precedent, so now I have to give in. Absolutely not. It means that was the best case for me at that time. So that's what I did.
Yeah, and so we often think about this term, the cost benefit analysis. So
Hmm.
how much is going to cost me to get what it is I think I want at some point? Like, what's the price of peace? So if I
Right.
leave that amount of money on the table, would I take that money and say, if I can just give that away, then I don't have to deal with this person for however long? Because it's not just in our community, there's so much with legal bills and everything else, but
Yeah.
that's not just legal bills. It's the impact this has on your health, the impact it has on your parenting, on your ability to work, like lost income, not just from being sick, but having to take time off every time you need to negotiate with this person or recover from something,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
just that trauma of having to
Yeah.
re-engage in that stuff on and on and on, that's exhausting, and that's, something to consider again when you're thinking of those have to haves,
Yeah.
like what do I absolutely have to have? So you're not at least giving those up. You're not giving those up. But if you have to do the ebb and flow and give some other things up just to get some peace and to get on with it and to get this resolved, then you want to know what those things are in advance.
Yeah. So it's like preparation is really, really important. Tell us some ways that people can prepare. I know we talked about using a mirror.
Well, yeah, the one of the best things I can do to prepare is to practice out loud. And I'm not, if you're shy, just practicing out loud to your mirror works
Mhm.
wonderfully, because it's just there's something magical that happens in your word choice and how you're acting when you're practicing out loud versus in your head. And I used to
Mhm.
train attorneys. I'd get them like right out of law school, and we had a 2-page terms and conditions front and back. And I'd say, okay, and I had like basically a cheat code. Like if they say this, they need to take this out. The answer is no. Here's why. We can do this. Here's where you can maneuver, like a whole guide to it. And so I'd give them a couple days, and then I'd say, hey, are you familiar with those terms? And I'm like, yeah, got it. I'm like, okay, well, great. Come into my office. And I'd put on my client hat and then start sharpshooting. And to watch them just stumble and fumble, like making these arguments that they know, but they haven't said them out loud. And it can sound so foreign. And especially in some of these topics are so sensitive and so personal on things that you're going to have to talk about with your kids, their parenting, with um, dividing up assets, right? To be able to say that out loud is so powerful. It makes you feel so much more confident. So a mirror, great. Another person, ideal, because that's another level when you can look at another person. My dogs are very good negotiators because they get a lot of practice. They are very excellent negotiators. One of them is very fat; he gets a lot of treats. But it's again, it doesn't matter where you're saying it, but saying out loud moves the needle. Like it truly moves the needle on becoming better at this skill. And this
I,
again, this is a life skill, and it's a learnable thing. Do not believe anyone that tells you like they're born negotiator. There's not. Like this is a skill just like leadership or strategy, that if you're not good at it now, totally fine. It's something you can build on. Don't worry about it. Use the formula, do some due diligence, practice out loud. Like having, if you're doing this for work, it's, keeping a journal on like what worked and what didn't, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, this is a very learnable skill.
Yeah, I love that. I love saying that when I do podcasts about how we can learn these things. Like
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, those people can do it. No, you can learn it.
Yeah.
Um, what was I going to say about saying things out loud? That's something like as a writer myself, and we work on presentation constantly with clients, especially pro se or self-represented clients. I'll say, they'll be like, I have it all written down. I'm all ready. I'm like, okay, pretend I'm a judge. Talk to me. And they're like, I'm like, okay, so we got to start with your opening.
Yeah.
let's,
Yeah.
let's try it. But it is very different when you say it out loud, and
Hmm.
everything needs to be, whenever I write something, I'm constant, my partner drives him crazy, but I'll be like, say it again, say it again, say it out loud. We have to hear how it sounds. And when I
Yeah.
was in court all those years representing myself too, and I'd write out these speeches, I'd read stuff to my dad and he'd be like, okay, write the word pause, Lisa, because I talk so fast.
Yeah, I do too. I know. I, I know.
Take a breath.
I
But
know.
it's hard. It's different on paper versus hearing
Mhm.
it out loud. And the more you practice, the more natural you sound and the more comfortable you become.
Absolutely. I was doing a presentation to a major company in February, and yeah, again, our default's the same. Like, you go fast, like talk fast.
Mhm.
I'm like, I know, like when I'm speaking professionally, I don't do this. This topic was a little bit different, so it wasn't my normal topic, and so I was recording myself on my phone, and then I go back and like, oh my gosh, Lynn, slow it down, and then I
Yeah.
do it again and do it again and do it again, and it's really helpful to record yourself.
Yeah.
Super, super uncomfortable. I hate, no one likes hearing their voice. It's uncomfortable. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, even
Yeah.
with yourself. Like, that's uncomfortable. It's weird,
I know.
but it was also really helpful. And I think the end result was better for it. I'm glad I did it, and I'll continue to do it. The other thing, that if people are really uncomfortable in negotiations or trying to think of stuff, and I don't know how much you guys use this, but is using AI for negotiation. If you say, okay, Lisa is this person, she has these qualities, here's how I think she's going to go, or this is what she's done in the past. I need to approach her with this request. How do you suggest I approach it? I mean, it's been creepy, what you guys have. Like,
Wow.
it can come back and it can say, and you can kind of fine tune, you can do role playing with a negotiation on AI, and it can be really helpful. Just again, to get you thinking on the, like we discussed, like, what's my counterpart thinking? What are their pain points? Because it can sometimes identify stuff that you never thought about, and that can be really helpful.
That's so interesting. All right. The
Yeah.
other thing before I forget is we talk about the different types of negotiation, open or closed or shuttle mediation. What's the benefit of doing face to face? I know all of our clients are dealing with prior or current domestic violence, and they feel generally very uncomfortable being in the same physical space. But I feel like if we can get to a point where they can be in the same room or on the same camera where they can see each other's faces, there's a lot of benefit. Can you talk about why you might agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I think the benefit there is that you get to read the nonverbals. It's not just the, a phone call, or someone else telling you what they said, because this person, you have, history with this person. So you can tell, uh-oh, that hit a nerve, or they really care about that. I can see, like, that's the reaction they have when they really care about something. So that gives you information that you wouldn't just verbally. And I think that's really valuable in a negotiation. Now, I will say, it's helpful when you can be the one reading it, that you also want to be the one, you want to be prepared going into that to not give away things in your nonverbals. So that means practicing, when you practice out loud, and if you record yourself, not just audibly but visibly, so you can see, like, oh, when I mention that I'm so uncomfortable, like, I put my head down, or I make myself small, or I can tell I get uncomfortable. Well, they're going to know that too. So then it's okay, I'm going to, like, control my body to reinforce what my mind, what my voice is saying. And that's something, again, that you uncomfortable to do, to record yourself and then go back and watch yourself. But you don't want to inadvertently give something away in your nonverbals, but you do want to pick it up on their nonverbals.
Yeah, and all of this, I'm thinking it takes time. It takes practice.
It
Sometimes
does.
people will see us right before and like, I have court tomorrow, I have mediation or something tomorrow, and so we have half an hour. Uh,
I
we're
mean,
talking
it's better
about
than
this,
not having the discussion at all. It's
yeah,
better than
yeah.
nothing. But the more time you can give this, and stay in the ready phase and really think it through, the more confident you're going to be. Um, And again, that's kind of like the superpower in a negotiation is you can feel confident. If you feel confident, you're going to feel way more comfortable in silence. You're going to feel more creative in coming up with a solution. You're going to not take the bait if they throw something out. You know, you're not going to feel, you're not going to say something that's going to feel really good, and you're not going to fill in silence with, with nonsense, because you have practiced and you've prepared, and you're going to be much more confident in what you're doing.
Oh, this is so helpful. So Lynn, can you tell people how to find you?
Yeah, so my lynnpriceconsulting.com. I do training, corporate events, speaking engagements, again, just teaching organizations how to become better negotiators and conflict resolution. I also do scenario training. We'll work with groups, and we'll have the basics, and then we'll break into small groups and say, okay, put it to work. And so I think that's very helpful, because again, it's one thing, it's just like practicing out loud. It's one thing to hear someone talk about this topic. It's another thing when you have to put it to play and see how this is going to happen and relate into what I'm doing in my day-to-day life. And then my book is on Amazon. It's called Negotiate It.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you again so much, Lynn. This is going to be we're going to be in touch after this, because I think a lot of clients could use more information on this skill.
I hope so. And I'm just so glad that, going through what you did to put this out there and to make this resource to people. And I think it's such a bold and cool and helpful thing. And I got your book. I read your book. It was so funny. I will say, I probably should have let my family know that I was on this podcast, because it was on the kitchen island, and my son came home and he's like, "Is there something you want to tell me?"
We hear that all the time.
No, yeah, exactly. But and is your new book is out now too?
Yeah, where is it? It's here it is. Yep. When your ex turns his kids against you, yeah,
That's
don't
awesome.
put that on the table either.
Yeah. Liz, I'm sorry that these books have to be written like this. That's just heartbreaking to me. It truly is. But I'm really glad that you've used what you went through and put this as a resource to others. I think that's really important.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, thanks, Lynn. This is awesome information. I could barely keep up with trying to look at the camera and write my notes down. But we
Awesome.
will
I'm glad it's
definitely stay
helpful.
in touch. All right, take care.
All right. Thanks. You too. Bye
Bye.
bye.